Welcome to Budget and Tax.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. All right. First up, 409, Senator King. Yeah, Senator King, what are you doing? 3 bills in a row?
You can have it. I had 3 bills in a row. So.
I'll tell you, next year only 2. You only get 2 next year.
Okay. Okay, there you go. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, our counties and municipalities are looking for new ways to promote economic development to improve the health, welfare, and safety of their residents. Senate Bill 409 will modernize the state's existing Industrial Development Authority by allowing a name change and expanding the uses of funds to reflect the current challenges facing the communities across Maryland to enhance economic growth. This bill does no harm to existing industrial development authorities and enables local authorities to act more effectively in their jurisdictions. As times change, our laws should change to reflect the growing needs of our residents. This legislation will give our counties and municipalities more flexibility in the way they address their local development. Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, I am just going to ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 409 and turn this over to my panel, who will explain the bill further and answer your questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. Dear Chair Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosapep, and members of the committee, my name is Maureen Evans, and I'm here on behalf of Howard County Executive Calvin Ball. We commend Senator King for sponsoring this important legislation. In 2023, Howard County adopted its new general plan, HOCO by Design, which is a transformative 20-year roadmap for sustainable growth. This plan highlights the critical need for redevelopment to accommodate our evolving economic, social, and environmental conditions. Howard County also adopted the Route 1 Master Plan, which identifies the establishment of a redevelopment authority as the most effective mechanism for revitalizing this economic corridor. And Senate Bill 409 aligns with these strategic goals by providing counties with the necessary tools to assemble land, deploy financing, and mechanisms such as the tax increment financing, also known as the TIF, and catalyze mixed-use development that supports job creation and economic resilience. Howard County is already advancing several high-priority redevelopment initiatives, including the Gateway Innovation District, which is a 1,000-acre business and industrial hub that's envisioned as a dynamic mixed-use innovation district. Additionally, Howard County just recently announced, just last week, its first ever enterprise zone, covering key commercial and industrial areas along Route 1 and Columbia Gateway. And this designation unlocks substantial tax benefits to our local businesses. I'm here today with Jennifer Jones, who is our CEO of our Economic Development Authority, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to her for more on how this impacts Howard County. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Chairman Gazzoni and members of the committee, thank you for having me here. As Maureen said, I'm CEO of the Howard County Economic Development Authority, and we are the economic development arm for the county. And over the next decade, or maybe 2 decades, we are prioritizing in Howard County redevelopment. As you know, our ability to do new greenfield development is limited. We don't have a lot of land availability, so revitalization and redevelopment is our goal. As Maureen said, we're doing the general plan and the Columbia Gateway plan. We currently have a tax credit or Route 1 revitalization program that we use and other credit programs. But we don't have all the tools in the toolbox that we need to help our redevelopment in Howard County. And so this legislation will enable us to work with our county council and our county executive's office to do proactive redevelopment in areas that we ascertain needs it. So we ask you for a favorable report on this bill, and we think that these are important resources that we need for not just for Howard County, but for our regional economy. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the Budget and Taxation Committee, my name is Laura Fritz, and I serve as the Director of the Frederick County Division of Economic Opportunity. My role is to enhance the commercial tax base and ensure good jobs for our residents. On behalf of County Executive Fitzwater, I am pleased to be here to support SB 0409. The county has revitalization plans underway, notably our South Corridors plan. As the local economic driver for the county, we lack the tools needed to encourage implementation of this community-led plan. In my research, I found Maryland counties have limited tools to address complex economic development needs such as redevelopment. This bill merely modifies the existing IDA code to expand the uses of funds of incremental funds, allowing counties like Frederick to partner with the private sector for important initiatives outlined in our plans, such as affordable housing, infrastructure, and public facilities. Over my career, I've witnessed how this tool has been used in other states to enhance competitiveness for jobs and investment while achieving our community goals. In conclusion, I request Budget and Taxation Committee give SB 0409 a favorable report. With this expanded tool, local governments can revitalize our communities, foster economic growth, and ensure a prosperous future for Maryland. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Chair Gazzoni and Vice Chair Rosa Pepe, and thank you, members of the committee, for having me. I'm Amy Gowan, President and CEO for Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation. We're a quasi-governmental organization. Our mission is to serve as a catalyst for business growth, thereby increasing the tax base, increasing job opportunities, and improving overall quality of life. I sent in written testimony along with County Executive Stuart Pittman, so I'm not going to be redundant. But I want to talk a little bit about why this is important to us as an organization in Anne Arundel County. While our focus has been on traditional economic development, your business attraction and retention efforts, we're more and more starting to focus on redevelopment activities, particularly in our underserved communities and in our older commercial quarters. In fact, we're actually taking members of the governor's cabinet to the Glen Burnie Town Center this week to show them the revitalization work that we've done in collaboration with DHCD. We have a lot of work going on there, and the state's been a great partner in that. But we're just scratching the surface. As Jennifer said, we're in a similar boat as Howard County. We're a mature county, and we're focused at this point not on greenfield development, but on redevelopment and being able to meet our housing needs, as well as improving our older neighborhoods and focusing growth where infrastructure already exists. Like HOCO by design, Anne Arundel's general development plan calls for exploration of a redevelopment authority to source additional revenue, to be able to continue the momentum of our organization, and to centralize those activities in one professional entity. And so, as you can see, a theme here, we have local land use plans that are all calling for greater redevelopment efforts in our mature counties. So, Economic Development Corporation, we're beginning a feasibility analysis on behalf of the county. This legislation is an integral piece to that. It's both timely and relevant. One, because it allows us to continue our pursuit to do the feasibility analysis, and also to inform how we structure our feasibility analysis. If the county wants to proceed after that, great. It then gives us the tool to do that. I guess I will stop there and ask for your favorable support of this.
All right, I'm going to lean in here. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Vey. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for the Greater Baltimore Committee. The leading voice for the private sector in the Baltimore region, GBC actively works with private and public sector partners, like those here, to grow a dynamic and inclusive regional economy. Redevelopment authorities can, and I really want to emphasize, and many other regional markets around the country do, play a vital role in this growth, helping the public sector make the kind of strategic investments like those you heard about here in the development of land and infrastructure to facilitate complex and increasingly expensive redevelopment projects. However, RDAs here in Maryland haven't traditionally played that role, leaving limited tools in that toolbox, as you've heard. By expanding eligible activities of RDAs, this bill allows counties to partner in the financing of economic development, redevelopment, and affordable housing. The benefits of doing so are manifold. First, an RDA actually acts as a dedicated body that can coordinate projects and align stakeholders around very focused redevelopment efforts. Moreover, by requiring investments, like for this bill, that actually require a project area plan, it allows RDAs to focus on specific community challenges, tailoring solutions to their specific needs. Second, the bill allows RDAs to access a much larger body of financing tools while also allowing them to leverage the private sector investments that's necessary to maximize that pool of resources available to support large projects. And finally, by doing all this, RDAs can spark the level and kind of investment that can stimulate growth that extends far beyond specific projects to revitalize their surrounding communities. In short, RDAs could be key drivers of regional development, economic diversification, job creation, and infrastructure employment in the Baltimore region and the entirety of the state, but they need to be given the necessary tools. For this reason, we hope you will issue a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Last but not least, I'm Bill Tompkins, President and CEO of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. And I appreciate the opportunity to address the chair and the committee. And I am very happy that Senator King has introduced this bill. I'm not going to repeat what's already been said, but all of these things apply to us across the state. So the primary reason I'm here is to demonstrate that this has very strong support from the economic development community across diverse parts of the state. And we ask for your favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Questions for any of the panel? Senator LaShung.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator King, for bringing out-of-the-box thinking, extra tools to the table. But as I've discussed with you, I do have a lot of concerns about this bill. While the concept on the surface makes sense, once you start to peel the onion, I'm afraid there are a lot of unintended consequences that really wrap around the issues of accountability and risk. So I'm going to try to put those concerns into the framework of a question. What accountability exists for this authority that is granted to the legislative branch today to an independent entity with no legislative oversight? I'm concerned, who are they accountable to? And this bill takes the authority for granting incentives. And if you look in the fiscal note, page 2, there are about 15 of them. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll give you a few examples. TIFs, tax credits, workforce development assistance, permitting, assistance in waiving fees, speedier permitting, entering contracts, borrowing money, issuing bonds, making loans. This bill would take all that away from the legislative body and give it to an independent entity. So I'm curious why you would cut the legislative body out of the process, and who has the risk? If any of these loans are defaulted, who absorbs the risk? Because my understanding is public money would go into this, but there wouldn't be public accountability. And my final question is, I'm not really sure why you need this. My understanding is that counties already have the authority to use TIFs, which, as you mentioned, incentivize economic development. So what would this proposal do that the counties can't currently do already? And if I understand this correctly, one of the aspects of the authority would be to allow them to acquire property outside the project area. I know there are a lot of questions buried in there, but my two primary concerns are accountability and risk.
Thank you, Senator Karen Lewis Young. I always appreciate your thoughtful insights. As it relates to accountability, any IDA today has to be approved by the county council. The county council has to create it. It is then managed day to day by a board of directors. That board of directors would be appointed today by the county executive. That being said, it is a quasi-governmental entity, meaning that it has to follow all open records law. It has to meet all requirements of a quasi-governmental entity of the state of Maryland.
Okay. You want to talk to the risk as well?
Sure. So the risk actually helps counties because by creating a quasi-governmental entity, that quasi-governmental entity would have bonding authority. If the entity chooses to bond, that bond repayment comes from the tax increment that is derived off of the district. That being said, if the bond were to fail, then the entity is responsible. The bonds are not backed by the full faith and credit of the county because of its quasi-governmental status.
Thank you.
So we were just looking at some testimony that was submitted, and there's one from the Maryland Association of Counties, and they are suggesting an amendment and inserting the legislative body of a county or municipality shall have full auditing and oversight authority over the established authority. You may not have comment immediately, but if you do, I'm curious how you feel about that, and if not, if we could hear back from you about it.
As I mentioned, because this is a quasi-governmental entity, it has to follow all the open records and meeting requirements. So I can't speak on behalf of this group, but from Frederick County's perspective, I don't have concerns over that minor edit.
Yeah, same with Howard, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would help.
Okay. Anybody, do you have a further question? No. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have anyone else signed up for that one, so we can move on to 358.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I have had the privilege of working on several pieces of legislation over the past few years to support Maryland's deaf and hard of hearing community. This bill before you today is another piece of legislation that is so important for this community. The Maryland Deaf Culture Digital Library, which is a part of the State Library Agency, serves the over 1.2 million deaf and hard of hearing Marylanders across the state. This first-of-its-kind library hosts one of the largest collections of books and resources related to deaf culture in the U.S., and the utilization of the DCDL is increasing year after year. The Maryland State Library Agency is required to fund DCDL from MSLA's operating budget, but no additional funding has been provided to meet rising operational costs. Senate Bill 358 will provide a long-term funding solution by appropriating $450,000 annually to the DCDL. Without additional funding, DCDL will be forced to cut programs, services, personnel, planned website improvements, or other operational costs that would have a direct negative impact on Maryland's deaf and hard of hearing community, and I request a favorable report on Senate Bill 358.
Thank you. Whoever would like to start?
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Guzone, Vice Chair Rose Pepe, Senator King, and members of this committee. My name is Tamar Sarnoff. I am the director of the Public Library and State Networking Branch of the Maryland State Library Agency, and I am here to ask for your favorable review of this bill and to speak in support of this legislation. There are, as Senator King mentioned, 1.2 million deaf and hard of hearing residents in Maryland, and unfortunately, they are one of the state's most underserved populations. The Deaf Culture Digital Library, DCDL, in partnership with the Governor's Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and the Department of Disabilities, provides equitable access to services, resources, programs, and training, not only for individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, but also for those who provide services and support to them in their daily lives, including librarians. Since its inception a decade ago, the Deaf Culture Digital Library has been funded by the State Library Agency as required by law with an annual allocation of $235,000, which was enough to get it up and running and sustain the first decade of services. But in living up to its mission and with usage increasing by nearly 80%, coupled with the rising personnel and resource costs, this initial investment and annual allocation is no longer able to meet the needs. By next year, costs are projected to reach $442,000. Our agency has attempted to fill the gap by using our limited federal funding, but this too has become problematic, not only because there's a lot of uncertainty right now at the federal level with regard to these funds, but because the more we need to rely on our federal funds to support DCDL, the fewer programs and initiatives we can support in the 24 county public library systems throughout Maryland. Governor Moore and DBM supported MSLA's deficiency request for DCDL in this year's budget process, and we are very grateful for this support during what we know is a challenging financial time for our state. At the same time, this DCDL and the people who depend on it need a long-term funding solution. This bill would ensure that happens. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Who would like to go next?
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. Thank you for having us today. My name is Brant Van Unen, and I'm the Library Coordinator for DCDL. I'm here to testify to support Bill 358 because the funding is critical for the services that we provide for the deaf community in Maryland, and even more so for the years to come. DCDL has been growing. We have been using our resources, and we're spreading out, we're helping people all over the state. We have our website views and our numbers have doubled from fiscal year 22 to 24. We have our collection services, our programs and resources that are all expanding. And as a result, we believe that our work is making a positive impact on the quality of life for our customers and the other people who use it. And with all of those improvements come higher costs, and we only predict that those costs will increase, which is why we've asked for this increase for DCDL so that we can maintain services for the deaf and hard of hearing community. We live in uncertain times, and historically marginalized groups are feeling very vulnerable right now. Without access to these resources, the community suffers, which means our state suffers as a whole because of that impact. DCDL is a vital piece of the deaf community in Maryland and beyond. Without that extra state funding, deaf people in Maryland will suffer as well. Hi, my name is Tiasha, and I represent the Maryland Deaf Agency. I'm here on their behalf. We strongly support SB 358 and thank Senator King for proposing this so that we can continue to grow this vital piece of our community in DCDL. It was set up based through advocacy and provides vital services for those in our community to access vital communication and resources that are otherwise not available for the deaf. DCDL has maintained high-quality content for the community to enjoy. They have celebrated deaf culture, raised awareness. They have a calendar for deaf-friendly events for the community to access, and their work is not done. The funding proposal from SB 358 will help DCDL have the ability to increase, maintain, and expand these services. And that will help them continue to help deaf, blind, and other communities. So we want you to recognize the profound impact that this legislation can have for DCDL to allow it to grow and expand for those in the future for our community. And we look forward to your continuing commitment to our community. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, can I add something there?
You sure can.
As I started doing these bills this afternoon, I can see the dollar signs in your eyes as you look at me. And I just wanted to say, putting these bills in that do have a fiscal note in them, whether we get to fund them this year like we want to or not, people need to know that we have the needs that we have, and I think they need to be brought out to the public. And I think they know, as we're working here, that we will do everything we can to fill your needs and do what we have to do. But you know, it's hard being on this committee and coming before the committee and asking for things that cost money. But I think it still has to be out in the public that we have the needs that we have. So that said, thank you.
Agreed. Appreciate that. Yep. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Any other any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. It's the last bill you get for this year.
No, I had another one this afternoon, just different. We'll go for it.
515.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, as of fiscal year 2023, there were over 3.2 million registered library borrowers in Maryland. Those residents visited libraries across the state approximately 16 million times and were aided by Maryland's 670 professional librarians and 3,443 staffers. To assist our public librarians and staff in meeting the vast needs of our library users, the State Library Resource Center provides cooperative, cost-effective resources, training, and services for our libraries and their customers. The State Library Resource Center is funded at a per-state resident rate. This bill was before this committee last year and was passed with a funding increase from $1.97 to $2.07 for 2025 and each fiscal year thereafter. SB 515 will look to increase that per resident funding beginning in 2027 through FY 2031. Passage of this legislation will allow our state libraries to continue to offer the services that are so important to our libraries and our residents of all ages, and I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 515.
Thank you. Whoever would like to go first?
Good afternoon, Chair Gazone, Vice Chair Rosa Pepp, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Carrie Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of Calvert Library. You have written testimony from me and from many of my colleagues, but I want to take my time with you this afternoon to say, and you probably hear this from all the kids, but there are very few dollars in the state budget that guarantee as much return on investment as the funds that you allocate to the State Library Resource Center, or SLRC, as we affectionately call it. SLRC is the flagship of cooperative library ecosystem in Maryland that makes us the envy of library systems across the country. The core databases that SLRC purchases are used by each public library and each school system. The Sailor Network provides internet to public libraries, public schools, and even some colleges and local governments. The subject matter experts employed by SLRC do research for our patrons and plan and present public classes for us. They provide professional development to library staff across Maryland, giving our librarians the skills they need to adapt to evolving community needs and technological advancements, ensuring that our libraries remain dynamic and responsive. Because of SLRC, Senator Bailey's constituents in Southern Maryland and have the same access as Senator King's constituents to a core collection of high-quality online resources and a world-class interlibrary loan system that opens the wealth of public library collections statewide and even nationally to the most remote communities across the state, even in Garrett County. Passage of Senate Bill 515 will ensure that the State Library Resource Center can continue its important work as a cornerstone institution for all Marylanders. Thank you for your kind attention and consideration.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. My name is Chad Helton. I am the President and CEO of the Enoch Pratt Free Library, and I'm here to express my support for the State Library Resource Center. And thank you for your time, and I will yield back.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee for hearing us today. Thank you, Senator King, for again sponsoring this bill. I'm Liz Sunderman-Zinger. I'm the chief of the State Library Resource Center, and I'm here today to urge you to support our future funding increases. The State Library Resource Center is a crucial component of the education ecosystem in Maryland. In these difficult financial times, a very small investment in us will have compounding impact across the state. An example is our databases and other electronic resources. These include official legal resources and forms that Marylanders can use to save time and money, test and career prep practice tests and guides for the GED, SAT, LSAT, U.S. citizenship tests, and more, as well as vetted, impartial, and accurate research resources used in K-12 schools. In fact, K-12 school users searched our databases nearly 2 million times in FY24, with almost 9 million searches overall. If these databases were paid for by the individual school systems and public libraries, they would cost the state $4.6 million. But for us, because we negotiate multi-year library statewide consortium rates, it only costs $600,000. That's $4 million worth of education money saved. Without us, either Marylanders would lose access to these resources, or people will have to source a lot more money than I am asking you for. Last year, we facilitated over 600,000 statewide interlibrary loan transactions. We are here to support public libraries across the state, and we're here to ensure that every person in Maryland has the access that they need. But we need your help. We know that times are hard. We acknowledge this. We are not asking for any increase in FY26, even though we need it. But going forward, we're going to need 4% per year just to keep up with the costs. We have proven that we get results, so please vote favorably on this bill so we can do our jobs and focus our attention on developing new civic engagement, workforce development, and education programs. Thank you so much for hearing us today.
Thank you. Questions for the panel? Oh, yeah, Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just have a point of privilege, this guy started last week, and he's already in the General Assembly. This is my new librarian leading with Baltimore City, Chad Helton. I got to see him Monday where they had that new program, Pratt Anywhere. But more importantly, I was admiring his succinct testimony. I think he learned already, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Truly was brilliant, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Senator McCray. And they were joined by Senator Guile.
Mr. Chair, I think I got one or two people joining me, and if I can bring them up.
You can bring everyone you want.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I'm here for the record, Corey McCray, Senator for the 45th Legislative District, and I'm here before you in reference to Senate Bill 401. Senate Bill 401 is a bill that would look at starting a MARC rail authority. Looking at the functions of MTA at this moment and kind of independently moving the MARC rail where it would be similar to the port, it would be similar to MDTA, still under the functions of MDOT, but it would be independent from that standpoint. This aligns in reference to making sure that our MTA have the opportunity to focus on our buses, focus on other operations that they specifically have, but also looking at other jurisdictions and how they look at rail from that standpoint and bringing it in line with that. Right now, I have sitting to my left, David Pendleton. You know I know you guy. From SMART, in reference to our labor unions that represent our rail systems throughout the state of Maryland.
Chairman Gazzone, Vice Chairman Rosa Pepp, and members of the Budget and Taxation Committee. Hello, my name is David Pendleton. I'm the Legislative Director for the Maryland Safety and Legislative Board for the Transportation Division of SMART. We are the train union. Our members in Maryland, we work for CSX Transportation, Norfolk Southern, Canton Railroad, Amtrak, and MARC. We are conductors, engineers, switchmen, yard masters, and utility workers. I'm here today urging a favorable report on SB 401, the MARC Rail Authority Act. SB 401 would create the MARC Rail Authority, allowing MARC to become its own independent agency operating on behalf of MDOT. Allowing MARC the authority to operate independently of the MTA will allow it to be more efficient, growth-oriented, and attentive to the needs of the riding public. Our neighbor rail commuter agency, the VRE, has had similar authority for decades while also having similar operations to MARC. According to its CEO's report in 2024, the VRE came in at $1.8 million under budget. This was due to its leadership being able to make and execute decisions without unnecessary bureaucracy. Despite ridership only being 30% of pre-pandemic levels, these efficiencies were achieved without having to lay off employees or making cuts to its service. In fact, the VRE managed to expand during this time and has started construction on many capital improvements at several of its stations and facilities, to date totaling at more than $125 million worth of capital improvements. Many more in the development and final planning stages, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars more. In the process, creating thousands of good-paying union construction jobs. MARC operates 3 times as many trains as the VRE. It operates 7 days a week, and it transports more than double the amount of passengers. Imagine what MARC can do if it were free to operate in a similar manner. And upon successful proving of this model, imagine the good reforms that could happen to the MTA. Better service, more attentive to its customers' needs while creating and maintaining thousands of good union jobs. To me, that's a win-win formula for success. Thank you for your time and consideration of our position. SMART urges a favorable report.
Thank you. Questions? Senator? Senator Bailey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. When we talk about the MARC rail, and not that familiar with that scenario, I know we have rails coming into southern Maryland, all the way down to Hughesville, down to Charles County. Is any of that, would that fall underneath of this legislation?
It would be where the MARC actually operates. So I'm not sure if the MARC operates in that respective space that you're talking about, because you do have rail, but I'm not sure if the MARC operates up and down.
So it'd be no expansion, is what I was getting at. Would there be any expansion to the MARC system as we look at different scenarios with expansion of down to help our travel issues in Southern Maryland?
What I would say is that the bill would now be in the behest of the committee, and if expansion is a part of the conversation, we're always open. I just wanted to lift up to Senator Bailey that this isn't like a new normal. There was a point in time where MARC was independent under the MDOT infrastructure prior to going and being wrapped into MTA.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make a comment. I think this is a really good bill. my district is bisected for most of the Prince George's part by the Mark Camden line, and the Anne Arundel part of my district is served by the Mark Penn line. And I've seen over the years that Mark has been the stepchild in the transit administration and in MDOT. And so I think going in this direction makes an awful lot of sense. I'm just telling a brief anecdote. Back in 2013, when we had a big transportation package, we got agreement to add 3 trains to the Mark Camden line, which goes through College Park and ends up at Camden Station, where the University of Maryland, Baltimore is. I called the president of the University of Maryland, College Park, and the president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and said, why don't we do a ribbon cutting on our 3 new trains to connect the 2 campuses of the university? And both presidents said, there's a train connecting College Park and Baltimore? So I think raising the visibility of Mark is a big deal. So thank you, Senator, for proposing this.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Benson?
I also agree that this is a very good bill. You had a bill very similar to this last year. What's the difference between what we're hearing today and last year? Wasn't there a bill very similar to this before this committee last year?
I put in a number of transit bills, but I'm not sure that I had one in this posture. This is the first time bringing this up for discussion.
I didn't hear you.
I apologize. I put in a number of transit bills, but this is the first one in this posture to bring forward. Yes, ma'am. In this posture, yes, ma'am.
It's different.
Yes, ma'am.
Very different.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. We have Dan Reed, who's favorable, and John Laria, who's a info.
I was looking for you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Reed. I'm the Maryland Policy Director for Greater Washington. We work to advance better policies in housing, land use, and transportation across the state. We strongly support Senate Bill 401. As explained, this bill would create a MARC rail authority separate from the MTA with its own executive director and its own board, and its responsibility would be to manage the existing commuter rail system and its possible expansion with funding coming from existing appropriations to MARC service. As it's currently set up, MARC does double duty, right? It's a statewide transit agency. The MTA plays double duty. It's a statewide transit agency that runs both local and commuter service. And one consequence is that efforts to expand MARC service, like running more trains or going to new places, are frequently set aside in favor of other priorities. And we're missing a huge opportunity to give people faster, more reliable transportation options. I used to live in Rockville and commuted to Silver Spring on the Mark Brunswick line. During rush hour, that trip is scheduled to take between 12 and 16 minutes, which would be hard, if not impossible, to beat in a car at any time of day, and I assure you I've tried this. Yet that service only runs in one direction at rush hour. A dedicated MARC authority might perhaps provide the momentum needed to expand service, maybe in both directions, so more people could use it. This is a small step to ensuring our transit system works better for everyone, and we ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, John Laria. I'm the chair of the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission, which is created by the Maryland General Assembly to provide oversight and advocacy for the Baltimore Regional Transit System, the MTA. The issue of transit authorities has been around now for several years. The discussion seems to be intensifying. In 2022, the Baltimore Metropolitan Council had a transit governance and funding work group that made some findings, and then it was included to be explored in the charge of the Train Commission. The BRTC decided to advance the discussion by commissioning a study of Baltimore Regional Transit, and that study was published in January. It is linked, hyperlinked in the testimony you have, and I've also given hard copies to the committee staff. This is important to BRTC because MTA, as you certainly know, is a modal administration entirely within MDOT that has no budget or operating independence, no governing board, and our commission really has very limited authority. So we're very interested in the discussion about what the structure ought to be. The study proposes 3 alternative models, which I could describe to you, but not in 58 seconds. But I encourage you to take a look. The issue today, the bill today, is should we take MARC out of MTA? And I would respectfully suggest only that it's premature. I think that there needs to be a broader discussion of the issue. Our report begins the discussion. It certainly doesn't end the discussion. More time needs to be taken to consider this, and I think everybody believes that studying what is a highly unusual structure for transit administration in Maryland is a good idea. But we think that a more in-depth study is necessary. I also have seen MDOT-MTA's report, which, beyond my technical competence, describes the complexities of what it would take to do this. There should be a comprehensive discussion of this, and it may well lead to MARC coming out of MTA. It may lead to other restructures, but we think that should be part of a broader discussion. So we hope our report, which again is available to you, can contribute to that discussion. Look forward to helping, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Concludes the hearing on that bill. Senator Gall, how convenient you're here already. Who made that happen? I don't know. I doubt it was planned, but it was planned. Oh, look at that. Good.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I represent a diverse district that includes both suburban and rural communities. I am proud that the Maryland Farm Bureau and the Anne Arundel County Farm Bureau are headquartered in my district. Agriculture is a vital part of our local economy and culture, and I work closely with our farming communities to support their needs. Today, I bring before you Senate Bill 460, a bill that would eliminate the sales and use tax on cut flowers. This issue was raised to me by one of my constituents, David, who farms in my district, and highlighted the inequities in how agricultural products are taxed. Under current law, most agricultural products, including produce sold directly by farmers, are exempt from sales and use tax. However, cut flowers are treated differently and remain taxable. Even flowers that are sold for consumption, such as edible flowers, are tax exempt, while those sold for display are not. This inconsistency places an unfair burden on flower farmers and sellers. Senate Bill 460 simply expands existing agricultural exemption to include cut flowers, ensuring that these products are treated equitably under the tax code. I do want to acknowledge the fiscal note associated with this bill, which reflects a significant cost, and didn't realize how much cut flowers. Maybe it's the Valentine's Day, but we do understand that the committee must weigh fiscal considerations carefully, but we felt it was important to bring this issue to your attention, given the many farming communities across Maryland that would benefit from this change. If this is a matter that the committee needs to revisit at a later session, we do understand, given the budget constraints this session, but we appreciate the opportunity to highlight this discrepancy and advocate for our farmers. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 460.
Thank you to the committee, and particularly to the chair and vice chair, and to Senator Guile for sponsoring legislation that clarify that flower farms in Maryland should be treated like other farms. My name is David Brunton, and my wife and I operate a flower farm about 7 miles from here, where we grow and sell the beautiful flowers that people buy in bouquets. We're among the nearly 300 members of the Maryland Cut Flower Growers Association, and like 88% of U.S. farmers, our family also depends on non-farm income for our livelihood, so I've taken leave from my non-farm job in D.C. to join you here today to speak only as a farmer and as a citizen, but not in any other capacity. Maryland is a perfect place for specialty farming operations like cut flowers. It does not require acres and acres of land, which would be difficult here, and it depends on a ready supply of customers who are plentiful here. Flower farming is experiencing a resurgence in Maryland, and the number of flower farms here more than doubled between 2017 and 2022. An impediment to further growth is that cut flowers, as Senator Guile mentioned, are treated differently than other crops. When we farmers sell our flowers to retail customers, we are required to charge, track, file, and remit sales tax, which is unlike any other farm crop in Maryland. In fact, some crops we grow and sell, like citrus basil, are subject to sales tax if the customer plans to use them as cut flowers, but not for their other uses like cocktails or yummy pesto. The legislation before you narrowly corrects what we see as an obvious problem, and I ask you to look favorably on it.
Thank you. Okay.
So I understand your issue, but I'm from the farming community. I own a feed store, and we deal with it every day where sales tax exempt for food and fiber products. So for instance, when somebody comes in, let's say they buy something for their horse, it's taxed. But if they're buying the same product, but it's for a cow, it's not taxed. So we're always kind of dealing with that. And, you know, I understand the issue, but I mean, I'm kind of on the side of it's cut flowers. You know, if you're giving the flowers to your wife, I think you should pay the tax. But if it's, you know, you're using it to make rose lemonade, which is something I now like that's from Europe when I'm over there, it's a great drink. Yes, that should be tax exempt because it's a food additive. So that's just kind of where I'm, and I need you to kind of pitch me on this to make this sale. You don't have to do it here, but, you know, to get me on, because again, I come from the store that I have where we're constantly dealing with customers where they'll come in and they'll argue to me that, oh, this is for my horse. I'm like, I get it, it's for a horse. Unless you're French, you're not going to eat that horse. So it's got to be for a cow or it's got to be for a sheep. So, you know, I'm being serious. That's
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
I deal with. So.
Thank you so much, Senator. And our farm sells flowers at our local feed store, and it's a great outlet. Those, of course, are sold wholesale to the feed store, and they, in turn, charge sales tax on them, which this bill would not change. The bill changes only when a farmer themselves sells the crop.
The retail side.
Right, the retail side. And often when this happens, this is literally at like a farm stand, somewhere where there isn't even a mechanism for tracking something other than, right, it's a $10 bouquet at a honor stand or something like that. It's not a store that has a point of sale system. It's a very different context. I will also note that the vast majority of our growers in the Maryland Cut Flower Growers Association are farmers who have been selling often row crops, corn, soybeans, and have been farming this way in Maryland for a long time and have chosen simply not to sell flowers retail because the hassle of having this crop treated differently from their other crops is simply not worth the small amount of additional revenue. I don't know I didn't see the fiscal note on this bill, but the gross revenue for Maryland flower farms, according to the 2022 Ag Census, was $4 million statewide. And we estimate from a canvas of our members that less than a quarter of that is retail, which would yield a sales tax amount for the state that would be like $60,000 or something. I mean, it's a very small amount when it comes to just the sale of flowers by cut flower farmers. And so if there's something here that could benefit from additional clarification from members or from a greater look, we'd be happy to help with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Senator Jennings didn't picture you as a rose tea kind of guy.
Rose lemonade.
Rose lemonade. Sorry.
You should try it with citrus basil.
Either way. Either way, I didn't see that.
That's great stuff.
Yeah. I would love some. Thank you. Thank you. Senator Bailey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And that was to the flower farmer. I was going to just ask you if you did have the opportunity to take a look at the fiscal note, because it says that it would decrease by $9.3 million in 2026. Right, which is rather a significant number. I know I have quite a few flower farms that we represent, but I do not believe any number like 9 million in tax just from the few flower farms that we have. I think that we could maybe take another look at this.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. If I could just add, we just got this fiscal note, I think, just yesterday. And so, I mean, we were pretty shocked, too, by this. Yeah, but I don't know if David wanted an opportunity to respond, because in short, he has not had an opportunity to look at this.
So thank you so much, and I will tell you that the number, the $4 million of gross revenue from cut flower sales comes from the USDA Ag Survey, and we're reasonably confident in the accuracy of that. And that this bill clarifies only that it is the sale of retail flowers by farmers that would change. It appears that this may account for additional sales of cut flowers. It would be worth noting that in the United States that over 80% of flowers are imported. And the resurgence of cut flower farms since the 80s and 90s, when they really fell off a cliff in this country, has been in part because of small growers like our families, and in the state of Maryland, where it really is a very good place to do this. We're talking about, when I talked about the number of flower farms has doubled, it doubled from 37 to 75 between 2017 and 2022. We're not talking about a huge, a huge sector, but on the whole, the numbers that I'm seeing here actually exceed the gross revenue of retail sales as I understand them, and there's no possible way that it could be correct.
I appreciate that, and I would also point out one other thing that I think when I see all the farm markets in my area and in the fall, there's a significant amount of corn shocks that are sold, and they're sold in the same regard as cut flowers, and I would say that those farmers do not pay any tax on that.
Mm-hmm.
So something to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to the virtual witness, Lauren Eulig.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for the testimony so far, and especially David, who is both a member of Maryland Cut Flower Growers and a close friend. My name is Lauren Eulig. I'm an architect, cut flower farmer. I'm actually a rose farmer. I believe it was Senator Jennings who's interested in rose tea. And a proud member of the 45th Legislative District in Baltimore. I'm also currently the president of the Maryland Cut Flower Growers Association, which is a group of around 300 members, and I'm here to testify on their behalf. I'm not sure that I can say anything more eloquently or clearly than David has already testified to, but I will say that this bill really seeks to clarify that this is the sale of flowers, cut flowers, by the farmer. Cut flower farmers feel this discrepancy in how the agricultural tax is applied, especially at farmers market, when kale sold as a cut flower is taxed, while kale sold as a produce crop is not. These can be either sold by the same farmer or different farmers located next to each other. This difference in regulation creates confusion and friction for customers, and also is complex for farmers who do sell a variety of crops to keep track of. I would also just add that it is absolutely not lost on me that this testimony is the week before Valentine's Day, which is one of the largest flower holidays in this country. And as David said, about 80% of those flowers will be imported from outside of this country and outside of the state of Maryland. So we do encourage the legislature to hear this bill, give it close consideration, and, give some relief to Maryland flower farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy to answer questions.
Question, Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, specifically comment. I just wanted to commend Senator Gile because my constituent has sent me many emails. I've learned about cut flowers and cut flower farms, and I was proud to know that cut flower farms aren't just in our rural jurisdictions, that we do have a number of cut flower farms in our urban areas too. So thank you, and thank you, Ms. Eulig, for the education.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senate Bill 419. Senator Jackson. Of course.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. What's up, man? Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, fellow committee members. For the record, Senator Michael Jackson, District 27, on behalf of Senate Bill 419. Senate Bill 419 is a piece of legislation that increases the income tax subtraction modification for qualifying volunteer fire and rescue, police auxiliary officers, and emergency services personnel. Currently, the deduction is $7,000 on the income tax. This bill proposes a $10,000 to move that to $10,000. Comparatively, our professional firefighters, career firefighters, and EMS, their deduction is at $20,000. We're trying to move it a little closer. This committee has seen this legislation in the past and has passed it out, as well as the full Senate. We believe this is the right thing to do. Just a little caveat, these are the men and women who are there for us at zero pay, folks, zero pay. They are volunteers that make sure that we make it home safely, and if we have an accident, they're there. If we have a catastrophe, well, that can be a catastrophe as well, but a catastrophe that occurred a few days ago, they are always there. This is a way for us to show our appreciation for those who do the things that I'm not interested in doing, quite frankly. We've been working with them for a number of years, this committee, and we want to continue to do that. And I think it's only proper, regardless of what our fiscal posture is, to make sure that we keep this in the forefront, that whenever there's an opportunity to take care of the folks who take care of us. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask for a favorable report, and I will turn it over to my panelists and stand for questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senator Gazzone, Vice Chair, and the panel. For the record, I am Chief Robert Phillips. I am also the Legislative Chair for the Maryland State Firefighters Association here in Annapolis. I represent somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 volunteers statewide. And these are the people, just like the Senator just said, we're the ones that go out and we don't get paid. We don't ask to be paid. But what I will tell you is our ranks are shrinking, and they have been for many years. And we're looking to increase our ranks, maintain, and then increase. And this would be another tool in our toolbox to help do that. I realize that everybody walks in here and asks for money. This is budget and taxation. That's where it's going to go. But what do you get for your money? The fiscal note on this year is, if I remember correctly, $1.3 million. So what do you see for $1.3 million? We have volunteers out here that not only show up when you need us because there is an emergency, but week in, week out, day in and day out, we're out there raising funds. And what do we do with these funds? Across the state on an average year, Volunteer Fire Service purchases, through their fundraising, 40 pieces of equipment. And that's going to cost something on the neighborhood of $35 million a year. This is funds that they raise that some government doesn't have to come up with. We've got 350 fire stations, and you're looking at, on an average of a year, $30+ million a year to keep these in operation. Now, that's everything involved in there. I mean, we got to pay the gas and pay for the electric, and we got to have all the apparatus and everything tested and whatnot. But for $1.3 million, we're returning something above $60 million a year. And all we're asking for is some help so we can say thank you to our volunteers. We urge a favorable vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the witness?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much, Senator, for bringing this bill. I appreciate having the opportunity to be on this bill with you in the past. Chief Phillips, quick question. If we paid for the service that your volunteers provided, if we paid for firemen to be in all these stations that you talk about, what would be the cost if we had to pay for that? Do you have any idea of what that would cost the state of Maryland?
Thank you for that. Yes, we do have a cost. Providing a career staff 24/7, 365, if you put one piece of equipment in every volunteer house in the state of Maryland, you're talking $350 million.
So you're asking for 1 million to save us 350 million?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
396, Senator McKay. And as he comes up, I'll have to thank Senator Jennings for this nice bottle of rose lemonade, which I'll intend to enjoy later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Senator Mike McKay to present Senate Bill 396. This bill will incorporate 911 specialists in becoming members of the law enforcement officers' pension system. The bill will also alter circumstances which certain individuals will presume to have died as a direct or approximate result of an injury sustained in the performance of duties for the purposes of eligibility for death benefits. Now, our 911 specialists and dispatchers are an integral part of the emergency services and as true first responders when the call is made and information is provided. For everything they do, deserve to be part of the law enforcement officers' pension system. Families, unfortunately, are left behind, and the unfortunate events of deaths also deserve these benefits forth of this bill. So 911 dispatchers, we all know that they take the call. We know that they hear very, very unfortunate situations. But a lot of them don't get the end story. If you're a police officer or a firefighter, you kind of see how the story ends. The 911 dispatcher doesn't get an update. And I tend to believe that as our mental health issues rise in our public safety officers, the time is now to add our 911 specialists. So everyone happens to have one of these fine leashes that are on around and handle our everyday. There is technology that's coming that our 911 operators will be able to say, may I have access to your phone? And they will actually now see the stories that somebody is reporting in. It's one thing to hear about it, and then it's one to witness it and still not to have it. For those reasons, I urge a favorable passage of Senate Bill 396, and I am at your beck and call for questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Thank you very much. You don't have anyone else here to testify, right?
I don't have any other.
Very good.
They're already in the testimony.
Okay. Senator Waldstreicher? 414. 414.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, which one would you like to take first today?
I have 414 first.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to hear some emotional testimony today. This bill is a bill you have heard, but not in a couple years. And 2 years ago, this committee passed this legislation under the leadership of now Congresswoman Sarah Elfreth. It got entangled in an unrelated issue that we were working on at the time. That issue is now settled, and so we thought it would be time to bring this back so it can be considered independently. So I was born on December 31st, the last day of the year, and the remark that people make when they learn that I was born on December 31st is that I was a wonderful tax deduction for my parents. I was only alive for 12 hours during the year in which I was born, but my parents got the child tax deduction for the entirety of that year. And it sounds cool, but then actually when you think about it, you realize that the child tax deduction is really not about the birth of a child in that first year, and that's why it's not prorated. It has to do with all the expenses that new parents put when a child is expected. And that was the case in my life. My wife and I had twins, and they were born in August. By March I would say we were already purchasing all the things necessary for them to arrive, and it was expensive. I was here in this chamber. We all know what we make here. It cost a lot to get ready for a new baby or babies in our case. And that means car seats. It means cribs. It means decorating a room for their arrival. And of course, the medical expenses that come with a pregnancy. And our twins were born, and we took the tax deduction in that year. For parents of stillborn children who are stillborn after week 20, most of those parents have those same expenses, but they are not eligible for the child tax break in Maryland. And so this bill changes that. It allows the tax break in 1 year for stillborn children who are stillborn after week 20. Those expenses are real. You're going to hear why there is, rightly so, an emotional aspect to this, and I hope you'll take both of those into consideration when considering a Senate Bill 414. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. Previously, I spoke to this committee, which unanimously approved Bill 408, so thank you to those previous members in attendance today. July 17th, 2020 is a day I will never forget. My husband, Max, and I had been married for a little over a year. We were overjoyed as we prepared to welcome our first child that November. We had lovingly finished setting up our nursery, reviewed parenting advice, and chosen the perfect name for our baby girl, Ava Pettit. But on that day, our world was turned upside down. I contacted my physician because something felt wrong. I suspected I might be having contractions. Shortly after that call, my water broke. We rushed to Anne Arundel Medical Center, holding on to hope that things might be okay. When we arrived, we received the devastating news no parent should ever have to hear. Ava had a 0% chance of survival because I was only 20 weeks along. Our nightmare had just begun. We were admitted to the hospital knowing that the worst days of our lives were ahead of us. Compassionate nurses came by to counsel us on next steps. We were bombarded with information and forced to make rapid, heartbreaking decisions. We had to decide what to do with Ava's remains. Could we afford a funeral? Would we want one? Would we need grief counseling? These were unimaginable choices for grieving parents to make in such a short time. Fortunately, my husband and I had the resources to cremate our daughter and scatter her ashes beneath a beautiful white poplar tree in our yard. We placed a simple plaque there, a lasting tribute to Ava, letting her know that she was real, loved, and forever in our hearts. But not every family is as fortunate. Every year in Maryland, over 350 families face the same devastating nightmare. Many of them are forced to make impossible decisions, decisions no parent should have to make because of financial constraints. Imagine being unable to afford the burial or cremation of your child because of unexpected expenses. Imagine not being able to access the grief counseling you so desperately need because it's simply too expensive. These parents are already enduring the most heartbreaking moment of their lives. They shouldn't have to suffer even more because they lack the financial means. I'm here today pleading with you to pass Bill 414. This bill would provide critical financial assistance to grieving parents, ensuring that they aren't burdened with making impossible choices during the worst day of their lives. By passing Bill 414, you can make a difference for families struggling to honor their children and cope with their loss. No parent should ever have to choose between their grief and finances. Ava's memory and the memory of every child lost too soon deserves better. Thank you for your time, compassion, and commitment to supporting Maryland families. I implore you to approve this bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Brady Reeder. I'm a resident of Kensington and the proud mother of 3 daughters. Our second daughter, Francesca, was stillborn in 2021 after a healthy pregnancy. We were shocked to learn in a routine checkup in the final weeks of my pregnancy that Francesca had died. My desire to honor Francesca, as I promised her I would, is what brings me here today. Stillbirth is a public health crisis that is rarely talked about, leaving lost families feeling alone and searching for answers. Nothing could prepare us for the devastation of coming home from the hospital without our baby, or that year of firsts as we grieved our precious daughter. After Francesca was delivered, the hospital gave us information about funeral homes. We needed to make arrangements in a matter of days while I was postpartum and recovering from birth. I promise you that reading the prices for the burial or cremation of your child is excruciating. These costs, which run into the thousands, are on top of all the money spent in anticipation of bringing home your new baby. I'm sure this committee knows that for too many Maryland families, $1,000 of unexpected expenses can be crushing. So when tax day came and it felt like nothing about Francesca counted, I felt yet another low point. And that's what it feels like to be a stillbirth parent. It's a lifetime of love that comes crashing down, and little public recognition of that experience. The truth is that stillborn parents are just like all parents. We're proud of our children and we want to share them with the world. Thanks to the courageous advocacy of others before me, there has been some progress made to recognize stillbirth, but more needs to be done. A stillbirth tax credit would support vulnerable families in our state. This simple proposal can provide financial support to aching families and an acknowledgement of their lost children. I'm grateful to Senator Waldstreicher for bringing this issue to all of you. We should do more to prevent stillbirth in the first place, such as urging the Department of Health to use more federal funding for prevention programs. And we should encourage families to share their stories to inform better policies. Stillbirth disproportionately impacts parents of color, with Black and Hispanic parents experiencing stillbirth at twice the rate of white parents. These are not outcomes that we should accept. My heart goes out to all the Maryland families who have recently experienced stillbirth. 3.5 years after losing Francesca, I still carry with me a deep sense of pain, but also a sense of love and of purpose. I'm so proud to represent my family here today, and I hope you pass this bill to support families that are already facing the worst time in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Senator Waldstreicher. Okay, that's okay. I just want to hear, Senator Waldstreicher, thank you so much for the bill and doing it, someone doing it again this year and following up. This means a lot to me too, because I've had family that went through the same thing. And I know it's not easy. And more than anything, I want to commend you two for coming here and giving your testimony. I know it takes a strong heart to do that. And I just want to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator, panel, thank you. Okay, Senate Bill 412.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This also came from a constituent. Unfortunately, he came down with a norovirus, so you don't want him here, I don't want him here, but I'll tell his story briefly. A constituent of mine drove up to Pennsylvania to visit his parents. And when he was visiting his parents in Pennsylvania, they asked him if he would assist them in setting up a 529 account for his children, their grandchildren. And you guys have done so much work related to 529s, primarily on winding down the trust side of things. But this is on the investment account side of things. And he was deciding whether to open his parents' 529 account in their home state of Pennsylvania or here in Maryland. And so he compared the benefits of each and learned that our neighbor Pennsylvania allows a much higher deduction for contributions than Maryland does. And this triggered for him and then triggered for us some research as to when Maryland established its current deduction for 529s and when we last changed it. And it turns out the answer to both of those things is exactly the same. The deduction amount in Maryland is $2,500. It was established in 1998, and it hasn't changed since. And so we applied an inflation calculator. What would $2,500 be in 2025 to the penny? And the answer is $4,834.64. And so the bill before you just rounds that up to $4,850 and updates the deduction amount for 529s in Maryland. Why is it important to do this other than just to make it accurate based on what inflation has done to the original 1998 number? I don't know if anyone was here in 1998, but it's been a long time. And the answer is, and many of you know this from your legislative districts, 529s are the most important savings tool for college for middle-class families. I have in my district a very wealthy area. They don't have to worry about college expenses, and many of them don't contribute to 529s. They don't need to. They have the means in cash to pay for their children's education. And many on the lower side of the economic spectrum, which I also represent in my district, similarly don't have to worry too much about the affordability of college, because our state, and to your credit, Mr. Chairman, and this committee's credit, as well as the federal government, provide tremendous resources to teenagers in poverty and just above the poverty line to attend colleges. And colleges themselves have scholarship packages to aid those at the lower end of our socioeconomic spectrum. It's those people in between, middle-class folks who really struggle. They're not so rich that they can afford college, and not so poor that they are eligible for all the incredible scholarships that we and other universities offer. And the 529 is critical to them. And so I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that we look to update the number and better reflect the purchasing price that $2,500 was in 1998 and reflect that in 2025 dollars. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reedy?
Yes, sir.
415 and 416.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget and Taxation Committee, Senator Justin Reedy for the record from District 5, here to present two local bills dealing with Carroll County government. The first is Senate Bill 415 that deals with permits and licenses and unpaid personal property taxes for businesses. Senate Bill, I got the right one here? 415. Senate Bill 415 would prohibit, would prohibit Carroll County Office of Permits and Inspections from issuing or renewing a license or permit until the applicant provides satisfactory evidence that there are no unpaid assessed personal property taxes. In an effort to collect delinquent taxes, the Carroll County Board of Commissioners has approved the policy to reserve the right to withhold issuance of permits requested by business owners who have these unpaid assessed personal property taxes. And so there really isn't an effective mechanism right now that the county has for holding these types of businesses accountable. And so they've had a situation where a lot of businesses have continued to sort of operate without paying. So they're trying to be able to, they have to, if they want to try to get the taxes, they have to pursue a court proceeding, which takes a lot longer, is slow and expensive. And so this bill would just allow them to withhold permits and licenses until the personal property taxes are paid. And we made sure the language includes if something's on appeal, that's not considered unpaid as well. So would love to have your support for that and ask for your favorable vote, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Have someone online also?
I believe, yeah. Pam Meister is here from our Carroll County government. She's our government liaison.
Hi, yes, I'm here just to echo Senator Reedy's testimony and ask for your support and answer any questions that you have about both of these bills today.
Thank you. Okay, why don't you go into the next one?
Yes, sir. Senate Bill 416 is our Senator Justin Reedy again for the record. Senate Bill 416 is Carroll County's Public Facilities Bond, which is our annual request for approval for borrowing with the Commissioner form of government. The number this year is up to $36.9 billion, million, not billion, my goodness, million, not billion. We had the state of the state today, so billions are more on my mind. But anyway, $36.9 million for acquisition, construction, improvement, and renovation of public buildings, facilities, and other public works projects. And we would ask for your favorable support for that bill.
Thank you. I think Senator Bailey may have had a question for the last bill.
Yes,
sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a quick question on your first bill, and I just happened to look at the committee testimony, and I saw there was one unfavorable that came in. Did you have a chance to review that? It was from the Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association.
Oh, interesting. I had not seen that, and they had not communicated that to us, so we can look at what was the nature of their opposition?
They pretty much just said that it would add additional layers to an already very long process for applying for licenses and permits. And I didn't quite understand their letter, and I just thought maybe you could add some light to that.
Take a look at it. I mean, I don't know why it would. It would only. I assume they're concerned that because there's an additional check to be sure they don't have unpaid property taxes, it would be. And we have been trying to work with the county to be sure we're going as quickly as we can on approvals. But again, you know, we have to be sure that folks have done what they're supposed to do.
I appreciate it if you just get back to us on that.
I will check on that, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on either of those bills? Senator Benson?
Thank you, my wonderful friend, for that, your testimony. You all are going to borrow this money, but do you have a plan in place on how it's going to be paid back?
Yes, we are AAA bond rated, and so we have a regular capital project, a pay-go system, and we will. It's part of the county's capital budget, and they do obviously pay debt service as well.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, sir. We have one more bill for this part of the hearing. Senator Quarterman. I think he's doing a bill in another committee. You don't know. Why don't we take a 5 minutes to transition into the procurement hearing, and maybe we'll get Senator Quarterman back and. We'll start procurement at 20 of.